Hello friends, I am Arpit and I am here with today's analysis. Today is 17th of May and we are going to cover two very important topics which are in news. First is the NAKBA Day. NAKBA in Palestine or Arabic language means catastrophe. This day is celebrated, rather not celebrated, by the Palestinians on May 14th. It was that day on which Israel declared independence for itself in the year 1948. This was done after United Nations passed this plan for Israel and Palestine. According to this plan, around 55% of the territory went to Israel, the Jews, 45% of it around came to the Palestinians, and Jerusalem, the holy city, was made as an international zone. This plan was outrightly rejected by the Palestinians who were thinking and claiming the entire land a few years ago and now were restricted in less than half of it. They were persecuted in their own land and the persecution still continues. That is why some Palestinian scholars claim that the Nakba continues. Next is United Nations Memory of the World's Regional Register. Now, three entries from India has been included in this register. First, Ramcharitmanas. Second, Panchtantra. And the third is Sahadrya Loka Lokana. Ramcharitmanas because it is a spiritual text which is common not only in India but also in other countries of Southeast Asia. Panchtantra because of its moral values, and Sahadra Loka Lokana because of its aesthetics. It was written by the Kashmiri scholars. Now, this, register actually aims to preserve the documentary heritage of any country, and these three are documentary heritages. Multiple entries have been included this time. More than 40 entries have been included, and it was the first time that India sent its entries, and all the entries got accepted in that. Let's get started with the first, that is Nakba Day. On May 15th every year, Palestinians mark the Nakba, which is catastrophe in Arabic, referring to the displacement. Nakba Day is observed on the day after Israel declared its independence on May 14th, 1948. So independence declared on May 14th, Nakba on May 15th it is celebrated. Now, what is the story behind Israel, declaring independence and all? So, just in a nutshell, if I tell you in detail, we will share this land. Roughly, we can consider this as Israel. Now, this on this land, the Jews were also living, the Muslims were also living, and Christians have been living. Now, when the Industrial Revolution came in Europe, the Jews went to Europe to take advantage of the Industrial Revolution. And they started facing persecution, discrimination in Europe. Now they decided to come back. They launched a movement called Zionism, return to the homeland. And homeland was where? Homeland was there where their holy city of Jerusalem was. So they started returning over here. And this going and returning had a decent amount of gap, 150 to 200 years. So they were away for 150 to 200 years. And by this time, the Palestinians, the Arab Muslims, started thinking that they will not come back and they spread themselves. When the Jews came back, they started displacing the Palestinians and established themselves. United Nations intervened and established Israel, which was 55% of the territory for Jews. Palestinians who were thinking that they will never come back started claiming on the entire land, now had to be limited in the less than 50% of the land. This is basically in a nutshell what the story is, but yes, in detail we will see over here now. Now, the promised land. Now, this whole ancient land of Israel, Palestine, and all. Now, according to the Hebrew Bible, God gave the land of Canaan, corresponding to modern day Israel, Palestine, to the descendants of Abraham, the patriarch of three Abrahamic religions. Judaism means Jews, Christianity, and Islam. So, this land was given to these three religions. On the same day, the Lord made a covenant with Abraham, saying, to your descendants, I have given this land. These descendants then settled in this promised land and established the biblical Israelite nation. Israel was the name God gave to Abraham's grandson Jacob, the third and final of the Jewish patriarchs after Abraham and Isaac. So, this is the genesis of the word Israel. and some religious connect with this, and that is why, you know, they call the Jews call this their homeland. Now, what happened to the Jews? So by the 19th century, the Jewish people were a small minority in Palestine. It was known as Palestine. It was never known as Israel earlier. So then a province in the autonomous Sultanate. Now, where did the Jews go? Most of the Jews migrated to Europe to take advantage of the Industrial Revolution. Who were the rulers of this particular land? Now, this land has been ruled by many rulers. See, from Greeks and Romans, Persians, and finally the Ottomans. And after the Ottomans, the Britishers took over. These were the prominent rulers who ruled over this land. Now, when the Jews were there in Europe, this call for returning to their homeland started. And this call for returning to their homeland is known as Zionism. So it was a movement among the Jews only. In the late 19th century, there was a wave of anti-Jewish violence in Europe. It started 1881-82 anti-Jewish pogroms in Imperial Russia. Then there was this incident, Dreyfus Affair in 1894, in which a Jewish officer in the French armed military was falsely convicted for passing vital information to Germany. Then the spiritual father of Israel, his name is Theodor Herzl. He actually wrote a pamphlet. Pamphlet was named as Der Judenstaat, the Jewish state. 1896 the year was. And when the word state has come, means they want to establish a sovereign country for the Jews for themselves. Now he wrote, we, the Jews, are naturally drawn into those places where we are not persecuted, and our appearance there gives rise to persecution. This is the case and will inevitably be so as the Jewish question is not solved on the political level. And the Jewish question will be solved on the political level only and only if they get a sovereign state. So this was basically this pamphlet which became quite popular, and these Jewish people are very skillful people. They are welcomed first, and then when they start taking over the things, then they are resented against. This is the thing with them. Was it the beginning? Means when uh, this call for Zionism arose, was it the beginning of Zionism? Actually, no. This idea was inherent. Jews were there in Europe. Small incidents used to happen, or homesick also they were. So this call for return to homeland and all was inherent. It was kind of a social current which was there, but it explicitly started to come out after that incident in France when that French army or military officer was wrongly, punished. And then this pamphlet by Theodor Herzl, which, claimed for establishing a Jewish state. State means sovereignty should be there. But yes, this was not the beginning, but this current was already there. This is not to say that there was no expression of Zionism prior to Herzl. For millennia, the idea of returning to promised homeland was a central feature of Jewish culture and belief. The very first wave of Jewish migration to Palestine began in 1881. So some people went back to that land of Palestine in 1881. And it intensified in the 20th century, 1930s, 1940s, when events like Holocaust and all started happening. And late 1890s, when Theodor Herzl wrote that pamphlet, after that it intensified. Now comes the Balfour Declaration and aftermath. So when this returning back to the homeland intensified, at that time, this Palestine was under the Britishers after World War One. That is 1914 onwards. This was 1914-15 onwards. This territory was called as Mandatory Palestine. Means it was a mandate under the Britishers who had to take care of this land. Now, the Britishers signed this declaration, Balfour Declaration, in 1917. According to the Balfour Declaration of 1917, in which the Britishers promised to help the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people. Now, with the collapse of Ottoman Empire in 1914, Palestine had come under the jurisdiction of Imperial Great Britain. Now, why did the Britishers wanted to establish Jews over there in Palestine? Palestine was a territory which was under Britishers now after the Ottomans. Arab Muslims were living there, which we call them as Palestinians. Jews started to return back. It is 1914 onwards. The 20th century is there. the return to homeland call has been intensified more and more. Now, what was basically the reason why Britishers were wanting to establish or settle the Jews over there? By giving its support to the Zionist goals in Palestine, the Britishers hoped to shore up Jewish support for its war effort. So it was World War One, during which the Britishers wanted the support of the Jews. Post-war, Britain began to actively enable Jewish immigration into mandatory Palestine and soon effected significant demographic changes in the region. So they got the support, the Britishers got the support, Balfour Declaration was adopted, and the war was won by that particular group in which Britain was. And after the war, it is kind of Britishers delivered on their promise and started settling these people more and more aggressively over there. Now, what was the demographic changes which happened and what was the reaction to that? We will see this. A 1920 British survey of Palestine estimated the total population of Palestine to be around 7 lakh. 4/5, yani ki 80% of the population was Muslims. Jewish elements numbered only 76,064 settlements, large and small, in 1920 survey. However, by 1945, changes happened. Overall population climbed to 1.76 million, means 17 lakh 60,000. Only 60% were Muslims. Earlier, 80% were Muslims. 31% were Jews. According to British estimates, 98% of Palestinian Muslims were born in Palestine, compared to 80% of Christians and 42% of Jews. So, Palestinians laid more claims on this land, and Palestinians were not happy. Palestinians means the Arab Muslims over there, they were not happy with the increasing settlement of Jews in the region. And hence, when we study the impact of the changing demographics, it fueled ethnic conflict. Ethnic conflict in which there was attacks on Jewish settlements, railroad attacks, and there were attacks on the British personnel also. In response, Jewish migrants organized to form armed militias to protect settlers and further assert Palestinian land. So, Jewish militias started to get formed over here. There were some moderate Jewish leaders who wanted to resolve this conflict by dialogue, but they were sidelined. In 1936, Palestinian Arabs launched a massive uprising against the Britishers and the Zionist settlers. Zionist means the Jews settlers. And this was known as the Arab Revolt. This lasted till 1939 and was eventually violently crushed by the British authorities. So this is all happening. And finally, you know, Second World War comes, and during the Second World War, the wave of Jews coming from Europe intensified more because, you know, there was Holocaust happening in Europe. Hitler and company were not wanting the Jews to stay there. So they started persecuting them more and more, killing them more and more over there, and they started returning back to their homeland more speedily. The problems intensified, which were already existing in that mandatory state of Palestine. UN had to intervene, and United Nations gave a plan for Pa- uh, Palestine and Israel. Now, according to this plan, the great territories which you are seeing, Arab state means Palestine. The light yellow ones you are seeing, Jewish states means Israel. And this holy city, Jerusalem, white one, was made as an international zone. This was the UN plan. 55% roughly goes to Israel, 45% roughly goes to Palestine, and this one city international zone it is. This is called as Resolution 181 of the United Nations. And Palestinian Arabs summarily rejected the proposal, means they clearly, outrightly rejected this proposal. They said that we do not accept this. The Nakba. Now, as soon as this plan came, this, urged the Arabs more, and they started a war against the Jews. It was known as the First Arab Israel War. The First Arab Israel War was won by Israel. Israel occupied more area than it was allocated to it in this particular UN plan, and you know declared independence for itself in 1948. 14th of May it declared independence for itself. 15th of May, the Palestinians who were displaced by the Israelis, the Jews, in their own land, they call it as the Nakba Day. I don't know whether to call it that, whether they celebrate it, because it is nothing worth celebrating, because it simply means catastrophe. But they observe this day on May 15th every year. That would be the right, I would say, thing to say over here. Now, since 1947-48, the first Arab-Israeli war, second Arab-Israeli war happened in 1967. Now, this second Arab-Israeli war, which happened in 1967, in this war, Israel occupied more area. In fact, the entire region, West Bank, Gaza, and all, was under Israel's control. And they were further made refugees in their own land, the Palestinians. If I talk about the present day, Israel today controls closer to 80% of the land. And we now talk about two-state solution. What is the two-state solution? The solution which United Nations gave in 1947, the UN plan, which we just saw. India also advocates this. Israel, after that, has occupied more area than it was allocated to it. It controls 80%, and that 55% was allocated to Israel. Now, Israel is not going to go back on 55%. This is what the claim of Israel is. India, on the other hand, advocates two-state solution. The Nakba still continues for many people over there because they feel that Israelis are slowly and gradually going to take this 20% also. So this is the situation. These are some technical things which you need to know. Next is UNESCO's Memory of the World's Regional Register. Three entries from India: Ramcharitmanas, Panchtantra, and Sahardaya Loka Lokana. They were added to UNESCO's Memory of the World Asia Pacific Regional Register. During the 10th meeting of Memory of the World Committee for Asia and Pacific, MOCAP it is called as, held earlier this week in Ulaanbaatar in Mongolia. This MOCAP is Memory of the World Committee for Asia Pacific. This committee under Memory of the World was formed in the year 2004. And since then, we have submitted first time any nominations, and in the first time only, all three got included. Now, what are being the reasons for inclusion? See, whenever any, first of all, we need to understand that only documentary heritage gets included over here. And in this list, Memory of the World list, and you know, whichever documentary heritage gets included, uh, it has to be preserved. This is the main, I would say, objective behind that. So, inclusion of these three works in register highlights the significance of preserving and celebrating diverse narratives and artistic expressions that are there in this particular works. Now, talking about Ramcharitmanas, the Ramayana and Ramcharitmanas both are read not only in India but also in Southeast Asian countries such as Cambodia, Thailand, Sri Lanka, and Indonesia. So it is popular. It became one of the primary reasons why Ramcharitmanas got included. When we talk about Panchtantra, these Panchtantra ki kahani or Panchtantra fables were zeroed in owing to their universal moral values. A lot of moral values are there in the Panchtantra ki kahani. And the 15th century Sahardaya Loka Lokana by Kashmiri scholars Acharya Anandavardhan and Abhinav Gupta were chosen because of its aesthetics. So, the three I would say documentary heritage, why they have been included, we know. About Memory of World Register, MOW. The Memory of World Register is for the entire world and it has subdivisions like India comes under the Asia Pacific region. So, Memory of World Committee for Asia Pacific. This is how we call it. Now, UNESCO's MAO program, Memory of the World program, is an international cooperation strategy aimed at safeguarding, protecting, and facilitating access to documentary heritage, especially heritage that is rare and endangered. According to its charter, UNESCO launched the initiative in 1992. Initiative means MOW initiative, and MOWCAP was launched in 2004. The program recognized documentary heritage of international, regional, and national significance, maintains register of it, and awards a logo to identified collections, facilitates preservation and access, campaigns to raise awareness of the documentary heritage, preservation needs to raise and funds about it, and inscriptions of the register affirms the significance of documentary heritage, how important it is, and how it is relevant in today's time. So it needs to be preserved and passed on to the next generations. This is the main aim of MOW, that is Memory of the World program by UNESCO. So these are the first, I would say, entries from India because first time ever we submitted these nominations. Now, when we come to the MCQs, On which day is NAKBA Day celebrated? May 14, May 15, May 16, none of the above. Which of these is considered as Abrahamic religion? Buddhism, Judaism, Islam, Christianity? Simple it is. I hope we can answer. Third is the Balfour Declaration pertains to which of the following? The UN plan for Israel and Palestine. The declaration by Theodore Herzl in a highly influential pamphlet called Der Judenstaat. Third is the declaration by Britishers to help establish a national home for Jews in Palestine. And D, none of the above. So, among these, you have to answer. Which of the following has been included in the UNESCO MAUCAP list? Ramcharitmanas, Panchtantra, Ramayana. Consider the following statements and mark the correct one. UNESCO MAUCAP was established in 1992. UNESCO's Memory of the World program is an international cooperation strategy aimed at safeguarding, protecting, and facilitating access to and the use of documentary heritage. Among these, which one is right? And with this, we come to an end of today's session. I will be seeing you tomorrow now with more such informative news pieces. Till then, you guys very well know what to do. Keep studying, keep reading, keep writing, and most importantly, keep revising. Namaste. Jai Hind.